On a dark, stormy night, when the clock strikes the hour most people are safely tucked in their beds, a pizza delivery driver named Mark finds himself caught in a web of nightmarish events that defy all explanation. As he navigates the roads leading to the outskirts of a sleepy town, he comes face to face with horrors and mysteries that lurk in the shadows, unsuspecting that his final delivery for the night may demand a price far costlier than a mere tip. In a chilling tale, where nothing is as it seems and no one can be trusted, you're invited to journey alongside Mark as he descends into a world of darkness, old curses, and demonic pacts. With every twist and turn, every flicker of light and shadow, your heart will race, leaving you to question the fine line between reality and the supernatural. Buckle up and brace yourself for a story that's as mysterious as it is horrifying, where the choices Mark makes could either save his life or drag him further into an abyss from which there is no return. Are you ready to place your order for fear? If so, let our story begin. Part 1. The Order. Last delivery for tonight, Mark thought, looking at the dimly lit streets through his car window. He was a pizza delivery driver and not a fan of late-night runs, especially to the outskirts of town where streetlights were few and far between. The GPS led him to a rickety old house at the end of a long, winding road. Tall trees surrounded the property, their bare branches reaching out like skeletal arms. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his boss, Jeff. "Remember, Mark, no matter what, don't go inside any houses. Leave the pizza at the door." Mark chuckled. The warning was a standard company policy, but it sounded so dramatic tonight. He grabbed the thermal bag from the passenger seat and approached the front door, noting how it creaked eerily in the wind. Placing the pizza box on the doorsteps, he knocked twice and stepped back, waiting for someone to collect it. No response. He knocked again, this time louder. He heard shuffling noises from inside, and the curtain in one of the front windows moved ever so slightly. He was about to call out when the front door inched open. A frail old woman peeked out, her eyes barely visible beneath a mass of stringy grey hair. "Come in, young man. I have your payment inside," she said in a raspy voice. Mark felt a twinge of unease. "I can't come in, ma'am. Company policy. Could you please bring the payment here?" The old woman sighed. "Very well, but you'll have to wait a minute. My purse is in the other room." As she closed the door, Mark felt a weird sensation, like eyes watching him from the darkened windows. He shook off the feeling. "Get a grip," he told himself. Minutes ticked by, stretching longer than they should have. Mark looked at his watch. He had been waiting for over 10 minutes now. His phone buzzed again. "Everything okay?" Jeff texted. Before he could reply, the front door creaked open, but instead of the old woman, a much younger person stood there, almost like her shadow but in human form. Pale skin, dark eyes, and dressed in black from head to toe. "Sorry for the delay," the figure said. "Grandmother is not well. Please come in to collect your payment." "Sorry, I can't," Mark repeated the mantra. The figure smirked. "Such dedication to company policy. Well, in that case, let me get your money." The door closed again, and Mark felt even more uneasy than before. His phone buzzed again. "Leave now." The text from Jeff was punctuated with warning emojis. Just as Mark decided to heed the advice, he heard footsteps behind him, slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel pathway, growing louder and closer. He turned around. What he saw made his blood run cold. A masked figure, drenched in red, was advancing toward him, holding what looked like... Part 2. No Way Out. A meat cleaver, glinting menacingly under the scarce light filtering through the trees. The figure was not running, but walking, as if enjoying the terror it was inflicting. Mark's instincts kicked in. He bolted towards his car, fumbling frantically with his keys. Just as he unlocked the door, he heard a voice that made his skin crawl. "Not so fast, pizza boy." He looked back to see the masked figure had stopped advancing, but was now joined by the shadowy younger person from the house, who was holding a chain in their gloved hands. Mark jumped into his car and slammed the door shut, locking it. His fingers trembling, he inserted the key into the ignition and turned. Nothing happened. His car wouldn't start. Panic surged through him like an electric shock. His phone buzzed. Another text from Jeff. "I told you to leave. Now!" Before Mark could react, the chain from the shadowy figure smashed through his driver's side window. Glass shards flew everywhere, cutting his face and arms. Mark screamed, covering his face with his arms, managing to unlock his phone with his trembling fingers. He dialed 911. The operator's voice came through just as the masked figure reached his shattered window. 911, what's your emergency? In danger. Send help. Mark managed to blurt out his location before the masked figure thrust the cleaver into the car, narrowly missing him and embedding it into the passenger seat. The police would take at least 15 minutes to reach this remote location. Mark knew he had to act. He grabbed the thermal bag and swung it at the masked figure, hitting them square in the face. The figure staggered back, buying him precious seconds. Mark kicked open the car door, dislodging the cleaver from the seat in the process. He began to run towards the road, his every breath a mixture of fear and hope. If he could make it to the main road, he might stand a chance. But then he heard it, the revving of an engine. He looked back to see his own car speeding towards him, the shadowy figure at the wheel. He dodged into the woods just in time, branches whipping his face as he ran blindly. The car crashed into a tree, the horn blaring incessantly. The shadowy figure staggered out of the car, cursing loudly. Mark's phone buzzed again. It was Jeff. "Don't trust anyone, not even me." Mark was paralyzed with fear. What did that mean? Could he not even trust his own boss? Then, from the depths of the dark woods, he heard it, a hauntingly familiar tune, his ringtone. Another phone was ringing close by, and it was playing the same tune as his. Mark moved cautiously toward the sound. There, hidden beneath a pile of leaves, he found another phone. He picked it up and saw that it was calling Jeff. His heart sank as realization washed over him. Whoever was doing this had close ties with the pizzeria, and they knew he was here. Just as he put down the phone, he felt a cold hand grip his shoulder. We now start part 3, Tangled Web. The hand was icy cold, its grip tightening around his shoulder. Mark swung around, his fists clenched, ready to fight off whoever or whatever it was. But instead of facing another assailant, he was met with the pale, terrified face of the old woman from the house. "You have to leave, young man. You have to get away from here now," she stammered, her eyes wide with fear. Mark was puzzled, but he felt an instinctive trust for the woman. She wasn't holding any weapons, and her eyes reflected genuine fear. "What's happening? Who are these people?" "They're not people, not anymore," she whispered, looking nervously over her shoulder. "And it's not just them, he's here too." "Who's he?" Before she could answer, a loud, chilling laugh echoed through the woods. Both Mark and the old woman froze. The laughter was coming from the direction of the house, followed by the rustling sound of leaves and the crunch of footsteps. Whoever it was, they were approaching fast. "We need to go," she urged, grabbing Mark's hand. "Follow me." As they ran through the dark forest, dodging trees and jumping over fallen logs, Mark couldn't help but wonder who this old woman was and why she was helping him, and who was this ominous he she referred to. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a clearing with a dilapidated shack at its center. The old woman fumbled with a rusty lock, finally wrenching the door open. They stumbled inside, and she immediately bolted the door behind them. "Who are you?" Mark panted, his chest heaving. "My name is Eleanor," she replied. "And I'm so sorry you got dragged into this nightmare. They were supposed to leave outsiders alone." "They? You mean the people back there? What are they?" She looked at him with haunted eyes. "They're my family, or at least they used to be. They found something in these woods, something ancient and evil. It promised them power and immortality, but it twisted them into something monstrous." "And he?" Mark asked. "He's the one who controls them, the one who brought the darkness into our lives. My own son, Victor." Mark felt his phone vibrate. Another message from Jeff. "Mark, where are you? I'm outside the delivery address, and there's a police car here. No sign of you. Call me ASAP." Could he trust Jeff? And why were the police already there? Mark was about to dial Jeff's number when Eleanor grabbed his hand. "Don't. You can't trust anyone who knows you're here." Just then, the shack's door shuddered as something slammed against it. Then again, harder this time, shaking the entire structure. Eleanor's eyes widened in terror. "It's him," she whispered. "Victor's found us." A voice from outside, dripping with menace, echoed through the gaps in the wooden planks of the shack. "Mother, it's time to come home, and bring our guest with you." The door creaked ominously, the bolt straining against the force from the outside. It was only a matter of time before it gave way. Eleanor picked up a rusty iron rod, her hands trembling. "If you survive this, run and never look back," she said, handing the rod to Mark. The bolt snapped, the door burst open, and there he stood, Victor, a sinister smile spreading across his face. Part 4. Final Deliverance. Victor stepped into the shack, his eyes locking onto Eleanor and then shifting to Mark. He looked almost normal, if not for the malevolent glint in his eyes and the unnatural pallor of his skin. "I see you've made a new friend, Mother," Victor sneered, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "How touching." Eleanor gripped the iron rod tightly, her eyes full of a mixture of fear and defiance. "It ends tonight, Victor. You can't keep doing this." Victor laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth or humanity. "Oh, but I can and I will." Mark's phone buzzed again. It was another message from Jeff. "If you're still there, Mark, take the iron rod and aim for his heart." Confused but desperate, Mark tightened his grip on the iron rod. What did he have to lose at this point? As Victor took a step closer to Eleanor, Mark lunged forward, driving the rod towards Victor's chest with all the strength he could muster. To his disbelief and horror, the rod pierced Victor's skin, and he howled in pain and rage. Dark, viscous fluid, not blood, spurted from the wound. Victor stumbled back, clutching at the rod embedded in his chest, his face twisted in a grotesque expression of disbelief and agony. Eleanor seized the opportunity to chant something in a language Mark couldn't recognize. Victor screamed, his body starting to disintegrate into a cloud of dark mist. "You'll pay for this, both of you," he hissed, his form vanishing entirely. Mark collapsed onto the floor, his body shaking uncontrollably. It was over. Eleanor sat down beside him. "You did it. You broke the spell binding him, but you should go now. My family won't stop until they find another way to bring him back." His phone buzzed again, another text from Jeff. "Well done, Mark. Your job is secure, and there'll be a bonus waiting for you. But we need to talk. You've seen too much." As Eleanor led him through a different path back to the main road, where police were now swarming the area, he couldn't help but wonder about Jeff's text. What did he mean by, "You've seen too much"? And what kind of talk was waiting for him? Eleanor hugged him as they reached the road. "Go and never come back to this place," she said, her eyes filling with tears. Mark nodded, stepping out onto the road, feeling the weight of the night's events settling in. As he approached the police cars, one of the officers ran up to him. "You're Mark, right? We've been looking for you. You're safe now." Just as Mark was about to breathe a sigh of relief, his eyes met those of one of the officers, a younger man, pale with dark eyes, eerily similar to Victor. The young officer smirked, and his eyes glowed a faint red as he said, "We're glad you're safe, Mark. Let's get you home, shall we? Yo, the end. Thank you for journeying with us into the twisted and dark corridors of this story. Your presence and your willingness to plunge into the abyss alongside Mark make telling tales like this one incredibly rewarding. We hope you were captivated, chilled, and left wanting to peek around even more shadowy corners. If you enjoyed this chilling experience, we invite you to stay tuned for more. There are many more tales to tell, each with its own set of mysteries, twists, and heart-pounding moments that we can't wait to share with you. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on the story. What kept you on the edge of your seat? What made your heart race? Your feedback helps us create even more compelling narratives for you to enjoy. Again, thank you for your time and for allowing us the opportunity to captivate your imagination. Keep the lights dim and your senses alert. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows in our next story. Until then, sweet nightmares to you all. Sweet.